Hello, welcome to this channel. My name is Esther and I love to sew. I'll be posting a lot of sewing videos in this channel. Please do well to subscribe. Today, we'll be drafting and sewing this lovely dress you're seeing on the screen. And the measurement we'll be needing is on the screen. Please, without further ado, let's get right to it. Here is my paper about the width of the chest circumference. I'm giving it a fold. Mark the shoulder measurements. Half the shoulder measurements is 4 inches. Half the armhole measurements is 4.5 inches. The chest circumference I'm working with is 23 inches. So 23 divided by 4 is 5.75. So I took 6 inches, rounded it up. I'll go ahead and scale according to measurement. Next is to mark 1.5 inches from the chest measurement downward, making the total length of the bodice 6 inches. And connect your points. Okay, I want the neck dip to be 3 inches, but normally the right neck dip for the size of a child is 2.5 inches, and that is what I am marking. So just use the neck dip you will naturally use. Mark, come up by 1 inch from the angle, angle, and curve from your armhole. Draw a straight line from the 3-inch mark to form your bodice. So just writing the measurements I use for emphasis. Mark out 2 inches for the sleeve. The sleeve should be 2 inches by 14 inch. The length should be 14 inch. I'm cutting it out. I'm going to go ahead and write it out just for emphasis. Cut out the bodice pattern. You're going to cut 2 for the front bodice and 2 for the back bodice. The sleeve, you'll be cutting 2 of the sleeves. Now to the sleeve casing, should I say the sleeve band. The width is 2 inches. You're just going to go ahead and measure 2 inches so that when folded it will be 1 inch. So for me, since the length I had was 3 inches, so my own is 3 inches by 2 inches. You're going to go ahead and double it because you can't have a separate band for both the front and the back. So you're going to double it so that it can serve as one band for the front and back bodice piece. So just confirming that it's 2 inches, and when full it's going to be 1 inch. This pattern we've just drafted is without any seaming allowance. So when you cut it on fabric, you're going to add your seaming allowance. I generally like to have an inch seaming allowance. Using the just drafted pattern, I went ahead and cut my fabric with seaming allowance. I'm using half-inch seaming allowance on places to be sewn. Cut 2 pieces of bodice for both front and back, making it 4 pieces, except you're planning on using another fabric as lining. 1 inch seam allowance for the sleeve band, that is ½ inch on both sides. Fold over your floater sleeve like so and give it a cut, just a little copy cut. When you're done cutting, roll hem both sleeve. Next is fold ½ inch on your sleeve band, that's your allowance on both sides, and iron, making sure to have 1 inch when fold over to sew. Gather the sleeve, the both sleeve, this just confirming the 1 inch and also indicating my joining and the seaming allowance where my sleeve will start and end. Now place your sleeve on that where your seam allowance starts and pin, and also where it will end. Arrange it evenly, pin, take to your machine and sew. After sewing, you should have something like this. Roll it and sew. You can hand stitch it if you want to. After sewing both sleeves in place, it's time to attach it to the bodice. You can go ahead and cut the bodice, divide it, but I don't want to. Just a quick reminder of the seaming allowance on the bodice is what I'm showing here. So open up the bodice, right sides together, sandwich your sleeve between the bodice, leaving ½ inch seam allowance on both sides, making sure not to catch the sleeve while sewing. Pin the sleeve and bodice in place. Take to your machine and sew. After sewing, give it some notches. Careful not to cut the seam. On the open side, pull the sleeve to turn the bodice inside out. Next will be to just arrange it and attach the sleeve and bodice to the second bodice piece. That will be the next step. For me, since I didn't separate my other bodice, I'm just going to roll it. But if you've separated your other bodice, it's just to place the 2 bodice pieces on top and sew. But since I didn't separate it, that's why I end up rolling it and sandwiching it like so. Just watch carefully, just the same process. that you did the last. Please always secure your sleeve in such a way that you don't catch it while sewing. And don't forget your half-inch seam allowance by the side, though that is not included while cutting. Pin it in place and sew. Okay, after sewing, go ahead, clip the edge. That's what I'm doing. Notches, then careful pulling it out to reveal my bodice with sleeve. Arrange it. You can go ahead and iron it. You can see how neat it is. On the screen is how I came up with 7 inches as my tear length. You can pause and look at it very well. Okay, back to the bodice. The width of my bodice is 14 inches. I'm going to add 20 inches to the width of each tier, starting from the width of my bodice. So 7 inches, that's the length of each tier that I'm having, and the dress is divided into 3 tiers, as you can see. So this part you can pause and look at it. You can add 10 inches depending on how full or how light you want it. I wanted it really full, that's why I added 20. You cut for both front and back. Then you go ahead and gather. This is where the tax is. You have to gather individual tier, and you only gather one part. Don't forget. Okay, here is the gathered one. We are going to attach it to the bodice. Make sure you don't sew on the thread you use in gathering. Come down a bit to sew. And don't forget, we added 1.5 inch, and here we have 0.5 inch, and here is 1 inch. On the screen you can see it. So that's why we added 1.5 inch as seaming allowance to each tier and came up with 7 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and pin in place. From here on, it's mostly self-explanatory. I'm sure by the time you're done gathering all your 6 tiers, your gathering skills will definitely improve. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it in place like so, as you've seen. I'm going to do same for both the front and back, and by the time I do so, I will sew it. Do same for all the tiers for both front and back. When I'm done, I'll be here to show you what it looks like. You're sewing on that 1/2 inch seam allowance that was left on the bodice. Okay, I'm done. Here you can see it's all fixed. So I'm right sides together. Go ahead and sew the side, join the sides. After that, roll hem the bottom. I've done that. You can see already. Our dress is ready. Just go ahead and flip it and reveal your creation. You can see how beautiful it is. Please subscribe. I have more sewing tutorials coming up, and thank you for watching.